It's very important for men. As you grow your strength, you also have to grow your capacity for heartfulness. They cannot be separated if you want to be effective.
Welcome back to the Lisa LaCroix Show. My guest today is GS Youngblood. He is the author of The Masculine in Relationship and The Art of Embodiment for Men. He's also been a student and teacher of men's work and relationship for over 15 years. GS helps men recognize the problems they face in relationships stemming from their own lack of masculine leadership and supports them in living and relating from their masculine core so they can be both powerful and relational. Thank you for joining me here, GS. Welcome.
Thank you, Lisa. Can't believe that we waited this long to do this.
Well, there's no time better than right now. So I'm loving having so many perspectives from different people coming from different places on this commitment we share towards powerful relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. This work is so subjective that having those multiple perspectives is great.
I like to start most of my conversations with people, whether it's this topic or another, whether it's my original podcast or this new one, asking people if there's something from their childhood or from their family of origin that might have informed who you are now and the work that you're doing in the world.
Yeah, I witnessed violence as a child, and I think that left a profound imprint on me. It's probably a kind way of saying it, imprint. And it left an imprint for me of not wanting to be the one that was in trouble. And so I think that led me to avoid my own truths when I was a younger man in life. And that was most certainly a contributing factor to the fact that I got divorced. There were lots of other factors too, of course, but that was a big one. And that was one that I've had to work hard on to be okay being alone, or what seems like alone to the deeper psyche, and try to get over that abandonment wound that I lived with for many years and didn't actually recognize. And thankfully, I've run into the resources that really help me go deep into that and come into a different relationship with it.
So would you say that the idea of sovereignty or the experience of being okay, being alone is central to the work that you're doing now with men? Is that a core piece of your methodology?
Oh, yeah. Oh, one of the biggest pieces of advice I give to men is just be okay with being alone. Be okay with losing her. Because once you can reconcile yourself to the fact that you could lose somebody and you're going to be okay, it actually frees you up to be more of yourself in the relationship. And that's really what we want. It's often less about giving these guys more skills, but really just stripping away the limiting factors and the fears that they have about, in this case, being alone. And I found that makes actually more authentic men in the relationship.
I have the premise that sovereignty and the ability to be without need in relationship is core for men and for women in relationship, and for the possibility of having a deep relationship that's born of choice. Do you think it's different, or does it have a different tone or different nuance for men in terms of that sovereignty piece? Do you think it is different, or do you think we're essentially coming from the need to be in that same space of choice?
That's one that I think does span both masculine and feminine. Let me tell you where my attention is right now. And I don't know if you intended to use this words, but you said to be without need in relationship. And let's sharpen that up.
Let's do that.
Yeah, you want to have needs, and you want to be open and upfront about those needs and unafraid to express those needs. You don't want to be without need. When you say without need, my mind immediately goes to nice guys who pretend they don't have needs. They're like, yeah, whatever you want, baby, and then they pretend for many years to not have needs, and then secretly they're resentful because they never got their needs met. Well, guess what? You never got your needs met because you always pretended you didn't have any. So I definitely tell guys, don't be in a situation where you, quote, have no needs. Like, get in touch with your own needs. And I talk, in the book, I talk about leadership and masculine leadership. Leadership starts with clarity, and clarity starts with knowing yourself and what you need, what your preferences and boundaries are, and being able to bring that clarity to the table. So I think that's where I want guys to go, is to bring more of their clarity about what their needs are to the table.
I love that you caught that language, because as a speaking coach, I love
Mm.
that you sharpened me on that language. Language is so central to how we relate and such an important part of our connection. Can you talk a little bit about the three-part framework? I know that there's the respond and react, and then structure, I think, and the last one is creating safety.
Yes. All right.
Can you
Very
say a little
good.
bit more about the three? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
perfectly laid out in the book in such a beautiful way.
Yeah, thank you. What you're talking about, just for the viewers, is the masculine blueprint, and that's the framework that I organized the book around. And I knew that I needed something simple for guys. I mean, you and I come from a lineage where we're talking about the divine and all this stuff, and it's great, but for most guys, it feels like clouds up there, and they're like, okay, that's cool. Thanks for telling me to be in my divine, sacred masculine, but what do I do? So I really
True.
wanted to appeal to that guy that wanted to, just connect the dots. And not that it's as easy as connecting the dots, but it had to be actionable and understandable. And the good news is that I don't understand anything that's too complicated anyway. So it had to be simple for me to kind of be excited about it. And so yeah, I tried to put together a three-part framework called the Masculine Blueprint. And this first one is respond versus react. So this is about getting grounded. The second one is provide structure. And so this is about leading in the relationship. And the third one is create safety, which is about building emotional safety and connection between you and your partner. There's other kinds of safety, like physical and financial, that I didn't cover quite as much in this book, but I will in a future book. So that is the three-part framework. And maybe what I could do, Lisa, is just, why don't we start with the first part, which is respond versus react, and I'll talk about that for a minute.
There was an interview that you did that I loved the way that you modeled that for the that audience. And I made a note of it, thinking it was such a beautiful example of responding versus reacting to anger into a
Mm,
difficult situation in a way. And I think what you said, it was with smoldering clarity versus popping off. And I loved both your example of that and your
yeah.
modeling of that, because I felt it when you did it. And I could
Mm,
see how a woman would respond to, I could feel in my own body how a partner or a woman would respond to that.
yeah.
I loved it. I loved it. But I think you gave an example of, she comes to you in a state of anger. And one of the things I've been talking about with men when I've been in men's groups and leading things there is that when she comes with her feminine storm, if you respond with a feminine storm, you're going to be in such a mess. And so
Hmm.
your example of this smoldering clarity was, I think, can you give us some kind of example of that?
You want to have the clarity. In this case, the example I gave is, hey, baby, we're not going to treat each other like that. And the name calling really isn't good for our connection. So I want to hear what you have to say. Please keep going, but we're not going to call each other names. We're going to be better to each other than that. So it's just like you have a clarity of how you're going to play the game, and you're not going to be thrown off by her insults and by her criticism of you, whatever she's upset about in the moment. And you got to have that clarity, and that's part of bringing structure. As you know, as a woman, when your pure feminine comes out, and sometimes it can get a little chaotic for us. Having that guy have that steadiness can be a guiding. Can be a grounding force for you. Sometimes it can be annoying, but that's a different story. But it can be a grounding force for you when he's clear that we're not going to be calling names.
It's a great example. And if it's said in the way that you just described it and you just modeled it, it comes with not only leadership, but also love and warmth and care
Heart. Yeah.
and care
Yeah.
for the connection and for the relationship, which how could you not feel that as a partner?
Yeah. This is something I learned really very clearly early in life, or early in my adult life. Because when in my marriage, which didn't last, I was working at a high tech company that was super hardcore. So we had a lot of this energy. So when I brought that home, her feminine nervous system, and this was a strong woman, by the way, but her feminine nervous system was very jangled. And I think I didn't learn it in that relationship, but I learned it in the next one with Lee, is, I can't come with that. I have to come with heart. You can bring my resoluteness, but it can't be this kind of resoluteness. It has to be one that is heart-based. And that makes all the difference. I can be very firm, but with heart, it's received much better if I come in like a bat out of hell and have that what Lee likes to call that jangly energy, or sorry, jaggedy energy.
Mm.
So it's very important for men. As you grow your strength, you also have to grow your capacity for heartfulness. They cannot be separated if you want to be effective.
That's beautiful. And
Hmm.
I want to really appreciate and honor the fact that you not only speak about strong women and how to build your capacity to meet them. And I know that you have a strong woman as a partner, but that I really have the sense from knowing you, from speaking with you beyond your relationship and also reading your book, that you really honor strong women. And that's a beautiful thing to experience because I think there's a little bit of a narrative in the feminine side of the
Hmm.
story that we can't be strong, men don't want our strength.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of interested in how you fit that together because I really do feel that you honor the strength of a woman.
Yeah, I had great experience being with strong women. My former wife, very strong woman. Lee, you know her personally, she's a very strong woman. And so I've had the opportunity over the last 12 years with Lee, to, as I was learning from, David Data and then eventually John Wineland and then some of the other teachers out there that I've learned from, while I was on a learning track in my formative years, I was also in real relationship and seeing what creates more connection and what shuts down connection, what was effective at settling her nervous system and what was not effective at settling her nervous system. So I was getting a real life laboratory on this stuff. This is not, I don't ever feel like I'm talking about theory or spouting off something I learned in a workshop. I feel like I've lived through pretty much everything that I teach. And if it's not me directly, maybe it's a client situation that I've helped them through. So yeah, I got lucky to tap into the resources, but also have the real relationship, and I feel proud of that. I mean, I can get a little snooty. It's like there's a lot of relationship coaches out there, but you need to follow one that's been in real relationship, has been there and back, and has failed and has succeeded too as well. And so it's good to have the learning, but it's also good to have the practicality. This stuff's got to work. It can't be theory.
Well, speaking of practicality, you mentioned attunement as one of the key things for creating connection. And I don't know if that's specific to creating safety or all three of the pillars, but going back to that practicality piece, how can men work on attunement or even
Yeah.
understand it or approach it?
Yeah. Let me preface this by saying attunement is the difference between healthy masculine leadership and toxic masculine leadership. Attunement is the difference between those two. As men, we used to be misogynistic and cavemen and all that stuff, blah blah, and then we turned into nice guys, and now we're trying to find our way back and bring more masculine leadership. The way to do that effectively, so that we're not just reeling back to the clock to the 1950s, is attunement. Is I need to know my woman. I need to know what she prefers. I need to know what lights her up. I need to know what shuts her down. I need to know what her wounds are, so I'm not poking those wounds. I need to know what her boundaries are for sure. And I need to know all that such that I can wrap that into my leadership as I go. So I'm not always having to ask her, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? I know her well enough to come up with some clarity about what the moment might call for and folds in her needs, wants, preferences, and boundaries already. I'm attuned to her. Not only am I attuned to her over time, but I'm also attuned to her in this moment too. So she could be in a different state than she normally is in this moment. And I'm going to notice that as well. If I can bring that attunement to my partner, or to my relationship, then I can lead confidently because I know her well enough that most of the leadership that I bring to the table is probably mostly in alignment with what she needs, wants, and prefers. And there'll be deviations, and that's fine, but they're much smaller when I'm attuned to her. So, guys, don't get the idea that masculine leadership about you doing whatever the fuck you want in the relationship and she'll just follow. It's not about that. Not with any woman of substance. it's about leading, but then folding in what she needs and including her. Baby, how would that land for you? Here's my clarity, but how would that be for you? And so there's the inclusion part.
The concept of leadership. And one of the things that you talk about in the book is leadership in sex or leadership in the bedroom, something like that. I might have the wrong title, but talk about how that specifically relates to or sexual leadership.
Yeah.
And does it map onto leadership in general in relationship?
Oh, absolutely. So many guys are sitting around waiting for their woman to get turned on and want to have sex.
Yeah.
And I mean, this as a woman, like, you're not naturally thinking about sex like we are. I mean, we're guys, we're always thinking about sex. But, a woman often has to be brought to her sexuality, brought back into her body because she's worried about 20 other things, particularly about taking care of others, and that she forgets herself sometimes. And so I say, guys, if you're waiting for her to initiate, you're going to be waiting a long time in a lot of cases. What can you do to lead her to her arousal? By consent, of course. I mean, that's the backdrop of anything we're talking about here is consent. But how can you lead her to her own arousal? And, I think every woman in the audience knows that starts days before the actual sexuality of like, it could be just like, did you clean up the damn house? And there's that whole notion of housework porn, and she sees you. But more, it's, have you been caring for her, whatever that means, because she's going to feel that. So if that's keeping the house together, great. If that's helping her with something that's been hard for her, that's great. She's feeling cared for. That's a start. Is she feeling connected to you? Over time, are you as a man building emotional connection such that she feels very close to you? Because that's when the body starts to open, and you know that as a woman. So there's stuff that happens way before, and then there's the initiation of the sexuality, and it could be arranging the night so you're going. This is what Lee and I do. We have to go out to dinner at like 5 o'clock, because if we go out and I eat a steak and have 3 glasses of wine, I don't feel like getting it on at home. I'm sleepy. So we time that. So we either go out late and we plan around that, or we go out early and we plan around that. So it leaves space for sexuality. So me having my eye on that is part of the sexual leadership. And then there's when maybe I'm wanting to spontaneously pull her into the bedroom, and am I getting the environmentals right? Are the dishes done? Do I have the heat in the room at a good temperature where she might actually want to take off her clothes? Do I have the lighting right? Have I done the music? Like, there's all these factors I can set in place that kind of take the brakes off her sexuality and make it easier for her just to surrender into it. And then as sexuality starts, do I know what she likes? For her, she likes a lot of kissing, like I think a lot of women do. And so, I know how to bring that to the table. I know how to touch her body. And then when you get into the sexuality, sexual leadership is kind of like leading the action from moment to moment. That might be creating variety. That might be getting experimental with sex toys and things that bring sensation to the body. It might be taking risks and take a chance. It might be not whispering something naughty in her ear that's a little edgy. Everything I just mentioned are all little forms of sexual leadership that picking her, looking her in the eye, kissing her, and then taking her hand and slowly leading her into the bedroom is a very subtle form of sexual leadership. Picking her up and throwing her over my shoulder and taking her into the bedroom. It's a playful form of sexual leadership. So all of that is sexual leadership and more. And it's fun to play in that. It's so fun that I'm actually doing that workshop that you and I talked about in October.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because I was going to bring that up, is that I know that you have taught and you probably will be teaching again workshops on bringing dark sexual energy, on men bringing dark sexual energy, and that's a type of leadership too, right? Bringing different tonalities, different archetypes, different energies to her as leadership.
Yeah. We you can bring light into the bedroom or you can bring dark, and so. Light is the caring and the love and the beautiful eye contact and the whispering each other's ear. There's the light, then there's the dark where
or best is both, right?
Well, that's where I'm going, which is my view. My worldview is that for men, hey men, your women, the unique combination is when you bring the light and the dark, and you have the two. Because we know that the light by itself is nice, but it gets boring. The dark by itself turns into bad things like misogyny or misattunement sexually, or even sexual abuse, quite frankly. But when you have the dark governed by the light, that's the unbeatable combination that creates real magic in your sexuality. So yeah, in that workshop, which we're doing here in San Francisco in October, we work a lot on the energetics of sexuality. So it's not just technique, do this, do that, but it's like, can you embody that mix? For me, dark energy is kind of that mix of, it's like there's a command presence to it, there's a playfulness to it, there's a directionality, and there's a little bit of mischievous in there as well. You know, we can't forget that it is play. And when you wrap all that together and bring that dark energy, that's when it gets fun. That's when it gets real fun.
And you're saying the importance of bringing the balance to it. And in order to, like, the light part is what creates safety for there to be space for that, which is really a perfect segue into the element 4, because we touched a little bit, and we're like I said, we're jumping and touching just the bare minimum. People really need to read the book to get the full picture, but we have touched on the idea of responding, being responsive, and then the idea from element 2 of providing structure, as with leadership being one example. And now the third element about creating safety. When you're bringing that dark energy, you need that light in order to create safety. Is that it's a great way to segue? It.
Yeah, I think the analogy is when we watch scary movies. Yeah. We like that we're sitting in our living room and we know that Jason is not actually over there, but we like to kind of put ourselves there. So we're safe enough because we have reality around us, but then we put ourselves on the edge, and that's what this is. Like, I say to guys, your woman wants to feel safe, but not too safe. She wants to feel a little danger. And when we say danger is what we mean, there's quotes around that. So yeah, can you take her closer to her sexual edge while she knows you got her?
Right.
You're not going to hurt her body. You're not going to disregard her sovereignty. You're not going to cross her boundaries. She knows that. That's her safety. Now you can take her to her edge. Mm-hmm. And whether that be, whatever your edge is, it could be restraint, it could be spanking, it could be dirty talk, whatever one's sexual edge is. When there's that safety there, then you can take her up to that line or close to it. Mm-hmm. Again, consent. I always have to say that.
Yes. And I think you have said, that I think that's what the thing I was thinking about earlier in the conversation that I was referencing earlier, where you refined the interviewer's language to be evoke, not getting her to do something, as a means of really talking about that piece of everything's an invitation to surrender. It's an invitation to participate.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And I don't remember the exact interviewer, but I do remember the clarification that I made. Yeah, we don't want to do anything to get to. A woman who's even remotely tuned in will feel your agenda. Yeah. She'll feel you trying to get something because you'll be pressing just a little too much, and she'll feel just a little too much. And so we don't do it to get. We hope to evoke, and as you said, we throw out our leadership as an invitation, not as control.
Yeah, beautiful. It's really beautiful. What would you say the corollary is for all of this? So I know you don't work just with men, but you work largely or primarily with men. And I'm wondering what comes up for you in the work you've done in your own relationship, but also in your relationships, in your coaching and your work with men who are in relationships with women. What do you see, and what have you learned about what the opportunities are for growth, for change, for women who want to be in the kind of relationship that you're supporting men in having?
Oh, I think what you're asking me is what advice might I give to women?
Yeah, I mean, you could okay, we could simplify it to what advice would you give to women? Sure, that works.
Yeah, let me refine the question.
Yeah.
How could the women use the principles from the book for themselves? And what I'll often say is use these as a diagnostic of the man that you've just met and are on your first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth date with. Yeah. Does he seem grounded, or does he seem a little spastic, like overly expressive, or reactive? And she could see that in how he drives. If he gets all aggro because somebody cuts him off, that's a little bit of a red flag of like, wow, this guy he's kind of reactive. And I get that he got, somebody almost nicked his car, but you can start to see that. And by that ninth date, there could be, the woman could be brave enough to maybe express something she's not liking, and then see how he reacts. Does he go defensive, or does he start explaining, or does he openly try to really get her pain? You can use that as a diagnostic. On the second element, provide structure. Is he a little flippy floppy on making plans? Is he a little wishy-washy on when he shows up? I just did an interview with a woman who talked about this guy who just he's like 3 out of 5 times he's late to their dates. And so she went on a really interesting explanation of the impact on her. But is he wishy-washy? Is he late? Does he have a hard time making plans? Does he always look to her like, what do you want to do tonight? That's a diagnostic that over time you're going to start to get tired of this guy and his lack of clarity and structure. Also, is he too structured? Like, is he so rigid that he overstructures and over identifies with that masculine quality, and that can actually get pretty confining as well over time. And then finally, does he seem like a man who creates emotional safety? And that usually takes a little bit longer to discern, but is he naturally tuned towards taking care of her? And this could be even the little thing of like, does he open the door?
Yeah.
I
want to just jump in because I appreciate your presenting this as a possible diagnostic, but my question is actually more along the lines of what's the corollary of men evoking the feminine in women. So not necessarily that they want, because I think too often women are a no to men because they're doing all the diagnostics in advance. But say they're already in a relationship, or they want to broaden their mind more towards a man that they're maybe seeing a lot of potential in. What can they do to do their side of the evoking of this type of masculinity?
We want to evoke our women's devotion, and I think women want to evoke their men's devotion. And I think bringing the energy into the equation, I think, is one way to do that. And that beautiful feminine energy and the radiance of personality, I think, is something that's very enlivening for us men. I can say that without a doubt. And Lee's brilliant smile just lights me up, and is that part of her radiance. I think the nurturing qualities are a big one. We all want to get nurtured. But I'm going with the archetypes here. Yeah. The masculine in me, after my battles of the day, whatever they may be, was somebody who can nurture. And I'm a sucker for somebody that can cook for me really well. I'm not saying that I think my wife should be in the kitchen cooking for me. I'm saying when she cooks for me and it's really good, I'm like, oh, this is so great. And I feel so cared for. It makes me want to step up for her.
Yeah.
It makes me want to be more grounded. It makes me want to lead more in our relationship. It makes me want to create more emotional safety for her so she feels safe, and inspires me. So those are a couple of the things. I think that when giving the cleanest expression of your heart is the biggest piece of advice that I give to any woman that asks me, like, what would you recommend for us?
So say more about that, because that might be a little abstract for people.
Yeah. You guys, a woman has a complaint. She's got some pain in the relational space between the two, and she's going to express that. And there's a whole range of ways to express that. We know that. And sometimes it goes to the toxic side, and it gets intermixed with blaming and shaming and punishing and stories. They try to take the emotion and turn it into pseudo facts and represent them as true. All those are going to instantly put the guy into his defensive and rationalizing mind. And I think women hate that when we get defensive and we go logical. You guys just wilt because you hate that. Well, I would say you want to inspire your man. Be a woman that can give the cleanest expression of her heart. When you were 30 minutes late for our date, I actually felt hurt. My story was that I wasn't important to you.
Yeah, I see.
As opposed to something harsher and like, you're always late. Like you're so wishy-washy. You're kind of floppy, that kind of blaming and shaming. The second one's going to make him get defensive. The first one, most guys will want to step up, or not all guys, but most guys will want to step up because the expression was so clean.
Mhm.
Man, that's the woman I want to be with. I
Yeah.
don't mind hearing her pain and stepping up to address it. But when it comes with the barbs of the blaming and shaming and the pseudo facts represented as facts, it gets so much harder and makes the relationship kind of tiring, to be honest. So those are three things that I would recommend could be the corollary for, evoking devotion in their man.
That's beautiful. I think I heard recently, I don't remember where, but that when we can bring our emotion wide instead of sharp.
Hmm.
So bring it that's an aspect of clean, or maybe it's like less
Mm-hmm.
Barbie, less with barbs.
I got you.
But bring the emotions
Yeah.
without it being directed or targeted or with anger
Yeah.
towards. You mentioned early on here, but also I think in the book, that this idea about being not in need of her and not pedestalizing her is
Mm-hmm.
important. But you also just recognized the truth of the fact that both men and women, we want devotion. I know women want to feel his devotion. So what kind of distinction would you make between the concept of pedestalizing and devotion?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Believe it or not, it's from what's the energy you're coming at it with, and pedestalizing is like, oh my God, I gotta,
Need. Oh, that's
yeah,
where I go. That's where I go to that need thing. It's like that's what I'm talking about when I say need, like
yeah.
neediness.
It's like I gotta do this to feel okay. And so it's like I gotta make you like me, so I'm gonna try to pedestalize you to do that. Versus that's my woman and I take care of her.
Mhm.
I'll run through a wall for her. You can feel the settledness and the groundedness of this, the resoluteness, the smoldering clarity of that.
Yeah,
That's my woman,
yeah,
and I'm going to do whatever it takes. So it's the energetics of it, not the actual act that takes place.
yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about polarity for a second, because as far as I'm concerned, so much of what you talk about in this book and so much of the work that we do is highlighted by the fact that when we can find a beautiful aspect of polarity in relationship, it really nurtures and nourishes the kinds of relationships that many of us, and especially cis heterosexual relationships, really want. But any of us who teach or practice polarity know that that word triggers the hell out of people. And as soon as you start talking about it, and you do mention it, you have a chapter on it in your book. So I know you do talk about it explicitly, not just bring the energetics of it. How do you respond, or how might you respond, or how can we think about the ways in which polarity triggers people, or how might we talk about it in ways that the benefits of
Yeah,
getting clear on polarity can be
yeah,
accessible to people?
yeah, yeah. I have a few responses to that. One is what I've noticed is people will take something they hear and they'll project a meaning onto it and then pretend that that's what you meant.
That's true.
And my response is pause for a second. Actually, you projected that onto that. So what's going on in your heart? And I would say for anybody that gets all bowed up about what we're talking about here, I would say you need to examine your own wounds first, because that's often where it's coming from. But what we're also talking about is energies, and as David Data way back in his book 25 years ago said, and I said it in my preface too, we don't care what gender you are. These are energies, and my audience is men who choose to be in their masculine, who are with a woman who's choosing to be in her feminine. That's my target audience. From that, you can adapt the principles however you want. So, you don't need to come to me and complain. Just adapt the principles to whatever works for you, because it's not my business what you're doing. So I think that's the easy way to do it. Is we just talk about it as energies, and I assign a gender based on my target audience, but you assign whatever gender you want, and it's quite straightforward. I don't think that there's not the need for the amount of rancor that's out there. Now, is there pain around how genders and blah? Yeah, but I'm not taking on that pain. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm here to help men who choose to be in their masculine. Yeah.
Do you notice any difference in the different generations or different ages of men in terms of their needs or desires or where they're sitting right now? Younger men versus older men, men in their 50s versus men in their
Yeah.
30s, different stages of life, but
Not so much. How do I say this? The younger, both are confused. So my age range of my client base is about 35 to 60. And, there's probably a bell curve right in the middle of that. Both ends of that spectrum are confused.
yes.
They're actually good men. They want to be
Yeah.
a good husband, good partner. They just don't know how.
Yes.
But there's a certain heavier quality to the guys who are older, and I just think because they're later in life, and I think there's that instead of like 35 and kind of your life is coming before you, so there's hopefulness maybe even if you're in a bad situation. On the other side of that, there's a little bit of regret at time lost, and I think there's a heavier quality to it that I've seen. So I'm often having to pump the guys up who are maybe 55, 60, pump
Mhm.
them up a little bit because there's a little bit of that heaviness
Yeah.
to the cluelessness that they're a confusion that they've got. So that's about the biggest difference. Other than that, it's age independent in a
Yeah.
lot.
So before we go to the age independent, because I'm sure that there are aspects of it that are, consistent, but I want to touch on that because I really do see that piece that you're talking about in generation of men who are in their 50s or 60s. Maybe they're in long-term relationships that are feeling challenged or like flatlining or, they just kind of accepted it. Or maybe they're post-divorce. And where does the hopefulness on that come from? What do you see as possible for them? What's the messaging? What is the pumping up?
The pumping up is everything can be different for you. This is
Mhm.
not pre-written.
Yeah.
It's not. It's like so much is possible. You can evoke something very different in your woman very quickly. Now, the
Yes.
more chronic it's become, and it's harder to get out because she's not trusting after 25 years of your other behavior. But aside from that, man, so much is different. When you do this work and bring, principles from the book and other things that other people are teaching, so much is possible. Yeah, you're smiling and nodding.
I
So
am. It's
you get
true. I
that.
know it to be true.
Yeah. Yeah. Life's not over at 60.
Yes.
It's not. It's so much
And
possible.
and I think the thing you just said that I'm smiling at because I think it to be true is that it can be a very small shift in an energetic approach towards someone that can make all the difference in the world. And I think that
Mhm.
I love that you're working with men to help them experience that and to help them have that shift in perspective, have
Mhm.
that shift in energetic, have that profound shift in their relationships. Beautiful.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. It's fun. It's fun to do this. I'm having fun.
We talked about the masculine blueprint and the three elements of that, the respond versus react and the providing of structure and the creating of safety. We talked about a bunch of other things in between it. Is there anything that is on your heart or mind recently in terms of your work with your clients or what you're creating? And I will ask you to talk about the things that are coming up. But in terms of principles or the ideas or what seems really important in your work that I didn't ask you about or that we haven't talked about?
Mm. Just slowness and spacious and stillness, like do less, feel more is really where I'm trying to get guys. And guys we're just go, go, go. And what do I do to fix this? And I got to do work, blah, blah, blah. And it's just, we want to get you to slow down
Yes.
and feel more spaciousness, feel more of yourself, feel more of her. Um, I do a lot of practices with guys to create these qualities in them. Yeah, stop trying to hero everything in your life and effort everything in your life. And it sounds crazy to a lot of guys who are kind of go, 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 especially around here in Silicon Valley. Everybody's like go, go, go. Yeah, but to slow down and stop being, so like, what's next? What's next? What's next? Um, is one of the biggest things on my mind, and just moving through life a little slower, with a little more grace,
Mhm.
and it gives you the space to witness yourself. I think this is what I've learned from one of my teachers, somebody you don't know, but I just did a 2-year program with him, and you can witness yourself from that slower speed.
Yeah.
And you can see how you can see how you're impacting the world, and you can make choices in that space, based on the witnessing. So that's
That's
a
the
that's a
basis of
lot
the
lot
attunement.
of
That's
what
the basis of attunement too, right? I mean, you have to be in that
part of
place.
it. Yeah, if you're just go, 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 you will rush right past noticing others. You'll just be focused on yourself. So that's a good observation.
Hmm. Beautiful. I love it.
Mhm.
And maybe share a little bit about, well, first of all, people can go get the book. It's an excellent read. And in addition to reading the book, how else can people learn more about you or the things that you have coming up?
Yeah, the best way is to go to the website, gsyoungblood.com, of course. And the thing that I have going that I'm most excited about right now is the boot camp. I take 12 guys through an 8-week process, and it's a great program. The guys really always get a lot out of it. And we just started one. Next one starts early September, so you're going to reach out for that. Um, and if you want to see videos, you can go to YouTube or you can find me on Instagram, GS Youngblood, MIR, and you could just get a taste. But really, go read the book. I think that's the biggest thing. And then sign up for the boot camp. Come join us in September. Or if you want to learn how to lead in the bedroom, come join us in San Francisco in October, the 10th through the 13th, or the 11th through the 13th, for a leading in the bedroom workshop.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for helping men develop the blueprint and the work that they're doing and show up for their women and their partners in different ways. It's really
Yeah.
radical and important work. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. And thanks for a great interview. Those were some good questions. Well played.
Great. And if you're here now listening along, you've enjoyed this interview, please do subscribe to the channel. I publish new interviews every Wednesday, behind the scenes around my nomadic life on Fridays, and speaking and communication skills on Mondays, and tips and talks on Tuesdays. So subscribe to the channel. It helps me grow. And thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.